Okay, great. Well, thanks everybody for being here and being on time. Well, I know we're all really excited about this webinar, so we're going to go ahead and get started right away so we don't lose any time, and start with an introduction of our two speakers. So hopefully you can see both of them. For me, they're at the top of my screen, and they will be for you too pretty soon as they start to talk. So you may know them already, likely encountered them in some form throughout our work with LAVBN, but we're excited to have Drs. Kevin Gruenberg and Richard Cohen with us today. They're the directors of Love Dad, and they're here to provide tips and strategies for supporting and engaging fathers in home visits. Love Dad is an organization that addresses the lack of support for fathers in services for families with young children. And since April, Richard and Kevin have been working with LAVBN to facilitate consult groups of home visitors, HLs, program managers, and supervisors centered on barriers, including dads in home visits and strategies for overcoming these barriers. These groups have been really successful in illuminating the unique factors that prevent or encourage dads to be involved. As a result of these groups, we asked Richard and Kevin to provide all home visitors with a foundational training about father engagement, and this training has become a part of the cohort trainings that LAVBN provides. But we also don't want the knowledge spread to stop there, which is why I asked Richard and Kevin to come today and discuss father engagement with you. Richard and Kevin have extensive knowledge of fathers, families, child development, and father engagement in home visiting, and we are really lucky to have them here to help you reflect on ways that you can integrate dads into your work. So please join me in welcoming Drs. Kevin Gruenberg and Richard Cohen as they present this webinar, Engaging Fathers in Hospitals for Home Visiting. Turn it over to you.
Everyone. Okay, I'm just going to share my screen. Hold on. Always cancel that. Okay. How many times do you have to do this to actually figure out how to feel like you know what you're doing? Okay.
That's great.
Great. Can you all hear me? Is this?
Yes, we can hear you.
Great. Well, it's great to be here, and thanks, Martha, for having us do this. And recently, we've actually got to work with some hospital liaisons in some of our trainings, and have actually learned a lot from the hospital liaisons about how actually, like, an aspect of home visiting and engaging families that we actually didn't have as much experience with, or don't really have any experience with. So today, my hope is that we're gonna make an engaging training. I've learned so much from being home with my younger daughter and watching her, like, incredible first grade teachers teach them, because they're so excited about what they're teaching. You know, Richard smiles because I usually write these outlines, and he, like, looks at them and he's like, "Gosh, it's so dry, or so boring." And then I told him about what great teachers my daughter has, and he's like, "Yes." He very kindly was like, "Well, you should teach like your daughter's teachers." And so our hope today is that you'll leave actually excited about finding ways to incorporate dads into your work. And so we think there's good reason for that. You know, the evidence was really showing that fathers are taking a much more active role in the daily care of children. And when fathers are involved in the care of children, they're really impacting kids on a lot of different levels. They're forming attachment bonds, which affect them throughout the course of their life. They help them explore and become individuals, become independent. They help them manage their feelings and their bodies and their minds. And they help them develop social skills that are critical for kind of their whole lives. One of the things that we noticed, and Richard and I had all this information, and we talk about it a lot, think about it a lot, but COVID has created new opportunities, I think, to engage dads in ways that we might not have been able to. We sort of picked up early on that, fathers were home much more than they had been in the past, which obviously has its challenges, but it also, for being service providers to new families, these were great opportunities of actually bringing dads into the work that we were doing. Okay, so I'm gonna switch slides. Richard, do you wanna start here?
Sure. So first, I just want to say really briefly how concur with Kevin how excited we are to be here and how we hope that you leave excited, and also to thank Martha not just for arranging this, but for being just a tremendous advocate within LABBN and with First Five in engaging dads. And the opportunity that we have to talk to you today is really exciting, because you guys as hospital liaisons are in the perfect positions to get fathers to get family units started, to engage fathers, to make it normal for fathers to participate. And as Kevin said, we learned a lot from the groups that Martha and LABBN put together that we met with over a 4-month period about those possibilities. And what we're going to do now is kind of back up a little bit and get you set up around the dad stuff, and then move into, okay, so what do we do about it? And the first thing that we want you to do to get into a positive frame of mind is to think about your own father, or to think about a male an older male in your life that you were really connected to, and think about what did he do to help you feel connected, and how did those feelings contribute to your orientation towards dads and families, and as your life has progressed, and perhaps even taken you somewhat into the work that you have now. And we actually want to give you, we have 41, so we have 39 participants, Martha. So 9 groups, do you think? Huh? How many,
Yeah,
Kevin?
no, that's what I was thinking.
Is that 9 groups? Can you break? So
great.
we're going to give you about 5 minutes in smaller, 9 is still a lot, but smaller groups, and we'll come back to these groups. So it's about getting to know one another, and introduce yourselves and say one short thing. First, we tell you to think deeply, and then we tell you, okay, but just make it short. Think about one thing to share with the group about how a dad or a dad figure has made a difference in your life, and we'll see you in 5 minutes.
Okay. All right, everybody's back now.
Good. So welcome back. I hope you had a good conversation and got to know each other a little bit and got in the mood of remembering positive experiences. We think there is this cultural assumption that that parenting comes naturally to moms, although those of you in the session today who are moms know that that's not exactly the case. But we don't think we often don't think the same things about dads. And one of the points that we like to make is that the desire to care for an infant is innate, but how you do that is learned. And dads have that desire to care the same way moms do. And to demonstrate this, we're going to show you a video that we made a few years ago. Some of you may have seen the still face experiment by Ed Tronick. And this was an effort to demonstrate how this works with dads. And unfortunately, there's an old guy in it talking, but watch the dads.
He's really old, just so you all know. Okay.
What we've learned over the years is that babies are much more capable than we initially imagined, but they're also much more vulnerable. And in Edtronic's still face experiment, we get to see both in a very short period. We see the baby and the dad playing together in their routines. There are things that they know about each other and things that they do together, and it's fun. And then we ask the dad to turn away, and when he turns back, to keep his face completely still and not respond to the baby. And the results are almost immediate, and they're devastating. The baby looks to the dad and tries to get the dad to get back into those games. Hey, we were just playing just a minute ago, weren't we? We were having fun. What's going on? And then the baby starts to get frustrated when that doesn't work. So she'll have to look away and look around the room and find something else and then look back and say, now can we play? And within 3 minutes, the baby has really dissolved. She is trying to get out of the chair. She's uncomfortable. She's reaching out to dad. She's crying. And then we ask the dad to turn away again. And when he turns back, to go back to being regular dad. And it's a joyous reunion. They get back into their routines, the things that they do together, the things that they were just doing 3 minutes before. And the baby settles down and gets back to the comfort zone that she's developed with the dad. What we see in the still face experiment is how able the child is to initiate and be part of the relationship between the father and the child, but also how much she depends on that relationship in order to keep an even keel. And when she's grounded and comfortable, she can explore the world. She can meet new people.
Hola.
She can try new things, and she's got that safe base that she can always rely on. And there's a trust level there. We can only begin to imagine what it's like for babies whose life is like that 3 minutes all of the time. And they don't get that responsiveness, and they don't get any help getting back to an even keel. And the results can be very tragic. They can have trouble trusting people, they can have trouble relating to people, and they can have trouble being calm enough so that they can explore the world and take part in the world. So we know that those initial relationships, that initial responsiveness and interaction between the father and the baby are keys to the baby's success as a child and as an adult.
So I hope that gives you some more insight into the depth of the relationship that dads have with babies. And in fact, there's a second video in which I interviewed each of the dads right after the experience, and they talk about how it was killing them not to respond. And one of the dads, we were doing it on video, and I asked one of the dads, and we were just chatting how it felt, and he said to me, well, what do you think? And I said, well, I think it was really hard for you, but you need to say that on the camera. So this was very difficult for the dads to do, and we want to give everybody a few minutes to make some comments about the video, what you saw in it, perhaps how it relates to your work, your potential work involving dads. And type stuff into the chat room, and then we'll read them off and share things. If you'd like to unmute yourself and make a comment, that's good too. Reminds me of moms or dads who may be experiencing PPD. Yes, yes, that is a lot. We'll talk more about it, but particularly for moms, the depression can express itself with not being available or engaged. Yes, the baby. Go ahead, Kevin.
Oh no, the next time the babies were all in, fully engaged and happy when interacting.
Yeah.
I think that you get a real sense of what a connected father-child relationship looks like.
Mm-hmm. And Janet said it was nice to see dad and baby bonding, and yeah, there is a lot of that to see, but we're not always paying attention. And it makes me realize that this is something that Alex, hi Alex, has been able to study with her child development background. It just makes her realize that dads need to be there, not just physically, but emotionally. And here we have again, all in. Yes, 100%. Good, thank you. Couple more.
A good point about the difference between just being physically there and also emotionally there.
That's right. And in fact, it's interesting while we're waiting for the next comment that Ed Tronick, who developed the still face, has been very concerned about the distraction that cell phones offer parents. He's upset seeing families walking and, and the parents on the cell phones not really paying attention. Interesting to see the bond between the child and how that experiment shows the reality of a disconnected parent. Yeah, when we think of it from the children's perspective, it can be so difficult. But the one thing that's really important, and I'll turn it back to Kevin, is to remember another thing that Ed Tronick always says, which is it's not the rupture, it's the repair. And that where kids develop their bonding capacity, their ability to trust that someone's going to come and take care of them, is when there is this disconnect and then the parent comes and reconnects. If the parent were there all the time and completely responsive, the way they are when you see them in the hospital, then there wouldn't be a development of independence, right? Nice to see the importance of bonding between a child and their father figure. Yeah, and in this case, they weren't just father figures; they were dads. Yeah. these were some great guys and great families. Kevin, back to you.
I mean,
Thank you.
I think that's an important point about it's nice to see, to actually see this relationship happen. I mean, there is an issue of representation when it comes to connected father-child relationships. And there aren't that many images of actually fathers doing a good job. Often fathers are sort of, we're making fun of dads for doing stupid things or being absent or something like that. So
let's get Jessica's before last thing.
Oh, yeah,
let's just get Jessica. She just got her ballot in just before the polls closed. Be sure you vote early. I wish I could see more dads engage. A lot of them go to work outside the home and they're not present during virtual visits. And I'm seeing more moms stressed, depressed. Yeah, wish more had the opportunity to engage and see the importance of their role in a child's life. One quick thing, which we'll come back to at the end. One of the things that COVID-19 offers us is the opportunity to link the dads in so that even if they're not physically there, or as in the case of many African American families where the dads are not with the mom and the baby, but they are engaged with the baby. They're very involved in the baby's life. it's possible with in COVID-19, because the visits are virtual, to link the dads in as part of the visit. So thank you for the straight line, Jessica.
And please feel free to text or make comments as we go along, because we do want this to be interactive, and we want to see you. We want to, and one of the things that Richard and I, when we think about these presentations, and how we even got into doing work with dads, actually has a lot to do with our own fathers, our own relationships with our kids, and things like that. So even in the first image that we saw, I'll go back to that. It was an image. Oops, it was an image of my dad as the father. I mean, is the child in the back, and that's my grandfather. But we really ground our work in our experiences, and when we do think about our trainings, we want to find things that are exciting to us that we can share with you, and hopefully that it will be contagious, And so there's this growing research around kind of the neurobiology of parenting, kind of what is happening inside someone's body when they're with their child or with their partner. And actually they're starting to do this research on dads. And what's really incredible is that dads actually biologically are prepared to nurture. So being actually in close proximity to a pregnant woman on a day-to-day basis, actually fathers start undergoing hormonal changes that prepare them to nurture. So dads are going through hormonal changes too. There's a decrease in testosterone, which makes them much more responsive to babies' cries, much more understanding and empathic. And actually I don't know if it's interesting at least, is that testosterone levels in men tend to stay lower in dads than they do in men who are not fathers. There's also this biological support to work together with the other parent, in this case, kind of like a mom. And that has something to do with oxytocin. I don't know if, how familiar you all are with oxytocin, but that's like the love and connection hormone. And oxytocin levels tend to synchronize in pregnant partners who are living together. And there's this idea that actually that supports this parenting together, the sort of biological support for parenting together. But parenting together, and I'm sure you all can sort of vouch for this if you have children and there's another parent involved, the two parents don't do the same thing. In fact, that's not beneficial to a child. Actually, having different ways of interacting with a child actually helps a child grow. And there's also a biological basis for that too. And that also has to do with oxytocin, and it has to do with when oxytocin is released. So for moms, oxytocin is released when they're in affectionate care, when they're looking face to face, when they're holding their baby, when they're feeding their baby. But for dads, it has to do with this rough and tumble stimulatory contact. The sort of things that we say to dads, like, they're a little rough, they're a little unpredictable. Some of those things actually support their connection with their baby. Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt you. One of the participants is having trouble hearing you. I think your audio is getting a little muffled.
Audio is getting muffled. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm just going to talk through this, and then I'm going to figure it out. Richard's going to take over in a sec, I think.
Thanks.
Yeah. Okay. I'll try to get a little closer, maybe too. And dads tend to interact differently. They tend to hold babies outwards towards the world. That promotes a sense of exploration and autonomy, whereas moms tend to hold babies towards the chest, which gives babies a sense of safety and security. And when you think about these things together, that's like the full package, to be able to have experiences where you're exploring and when you're independent, and experiences when you feel safe. Let me see if I can figure out this. Richard, I know this is just give me 1 sec, because we're having a microphone issue. I want to try to figure that out.
We?
Me, yeah. I mean, Richard, we could all listen to Richard sing. Does anyone want to hear Richard sing?
That sounded much better, that last little bit there. Whatever you did
that,
there, do that again.
Oh, now we can't hear you at all. No. Hey, do you guys remember those old TV commercials, the US Cellular? Can you hear me now?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, there we go. There we go.
Can you hear me now? Great. Okay.
Yeah. You sound better.
I mean, if no one hears, I might just keep talking, which is scary. All right. So fathers involved in young children's lives promote family resilience. Okay. And so one of the most interesting studies Richard and I have come across is actually that when dads parent in attuned and sensitive ways, they actually buffer the impact of maternal depression on young children. So we know that maternal depression increases the risk of childhood psychopathology significantly, I think by 4 or 5 times. And dads who are involved in the care of their young children reduce the risk by half. Also, dads who are involved in the care with their young children and are involved in pregnancy support moms to be more healthy. It reduces maternal stress. Dads who are involved tend to, moms tend to do more breastfeeding. There tends to be less preterm birth and things like that. Richard, do you want to take over? And hopefully I'm going to sort of figure out if I can deal with this microphone issue.
Yeah, you were good for a while, and then you would, maybe if you just sit still, Kevin.
I can't sit still, that's the problem.
I know.
That's really shaming, you know, to call me out about something that is really hard for me to do.
If it helps you at all, you're not alone in this. It's why we get along so well. Neither of us can sit still. Yes, so what we want to, now that we've been talking about this capacity that dads have and the degree to which they're prepared to nurture in different ways than mom, but prepared than moms. And again, we're talking large group numbers here, and it's not about any different, you know, your individual dad may vary. We want to start moving into a little bit into, so what can we do about it? And the first thing we already know from interviewing lots of people and working with lots of people who are working with fathers and families, that everybody says that they really want dads to participate, but that there are barriers. And one of the primary barriers is one of the primary barriers is our conception, our cultural notions about what are the right roles for men and what are the right roles for dads. And since a lot of fathers, and Kevin's going to talk more about this in a minute, since a lot of dads also experience mental health challenges, which we often misinterpret as dads being not interested or just angry, it's important for us as we think about these roles, these changes in the inclusion of dads, to understand what we're bringing with us, to be reflective about what we're carrying, what we've learned. And so what we want to do is to give you some time in the group, and this is going to be longer actually. We're going to make it about 12 minutes. Oh, great keeper of the clock, Ms. Bach. To talk about these two questions. Yeah, dads, moms usually place babies on their chests. What does your culture tell you about masculinity and machismo? And what does your culture tell you about mental health challenges generally, every culture stigmatizes mental health issues in its own way. But we want you to think about how your culture does it, and particularly for men. You know, are they just supposed to suck it up and get through it, or how does that work? So we're going to give you some time to go back to your rooms. Everybody go back to your rooms and think about what your culture tells you about masculinity and machismo, and what does your culture tell you about mental health. Spend about half the time on each. You already know these folks in your rooms, right? So you're used to them. You can have some frank and open conversations. Kevin and I are going to stay out, so we'll see you in 12 minutes.
Hey Richard, it's
Hey,
Alex.
hi Alex, how are you doing?
Good, and yourself?
Good,
Hi Kevin.
excellent.
Hey, Alex. Hey.
So I kind of feel like I'm cheating by answering this because I've already taken like your guys' training and I've had so much practice, but I feel like I'm one of the best ones that had a great father figure that was involved. And I think when it came down to choosing my partner, I made sure that we were on the same page as far as like involvement went, and how we would take care of the child, 50-50, and how everything would be done equally. So for me to walk into a room and to hear a mom say, I don't have that support from my partner, it breaks my heart, because I had it from my dad and my children have it from my husband. So that's where I find the disconnect. But I know that in our Hispanic Latino culture, machismo is huge, and dad goes to work and mom takes care of children and household, and that's it. That's the way it is. Most of the moms that I do enroll are homemakers and home, with the child, and dad is the one that's working. So, just as simple as talking to them about skin to skin, I hope makes a difference, for them as a father, and for mom to kind of realize that, like, hey, dad can do this too, And I'm not gonna lie, in our group, we spoke about how I feel that there has been a shift in the last year or so where I see a ton of dads in the rooms doing skin to skin, and it makes me so happy. And I always tell them, great job, great. I'm glad to see that you're doing that part of bonding with your child, and don't just do it here, carry this on at home, So I hope that the shift stays, and that programs like these and the Shields one that we participate in, that there's a bigger difference, and that dads start to make that shift into just being part of their children's lives.
Thanks. And we have to say that not only did we're happy to hear that Alex learned something from us, but actually the cheating was in the opposite direction, because Alex participated in our small groups, and we learned a tremendous amount from her. So we're grateful for your participation and for your examples of the things that you've been trying to engage dads. So we'll get you later. Let's get a couple more.
It could be over text or...
Yeah, either way, whatever you're comfortable with.
Yeah. Curious how I mean, for anyone, how you feel culture affects how you think about mental health challenges, particularly for men.
Hi, I'll share a little bit. My name is Jessica, and I was just sharing in our group how I recall a visit I did during the Christmas time, and the dad shared a little bit about how he was feeling, and I knew that based on my observations and what he was sharing, I knew that he needed help right away. But because it was the holiday and that was our last visit for that day, and then we had a few days off, we couldn't link him to any place. And when we came back to the office after the holiday, we heard from the mom that dad tried to do something just like he shared during the visit. So I think that for dads, when they're screaming for help, the men are more easily to do something right away. So it's very important that if a dad is telling you that, leave something in place and make sure that, that you help the dad when you're in the visit. So that's something that I have learned throughout my visits, that dads tend to act more faster. Women will start sharing how they're feeling, and but men usually tend to go and do something right away.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
What a difficult situation that must have been for you not to be able to do anything, but how amazing of you to notice, to be paying attention to that and to have incorporated that into the work you do in home visits. And I hope you wound up getting some help or being well enough. Or we have a couple more.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead, Kevin. I'm sorry.
Well, yeah, there are a few comments. I'm not going to read them individually, but I think they're focused around how men tend to not share feelings, that they're not supposed to cry. You have to be strong. That like showing tears is a sign of weakness, showing vulnerability is a sign of weakness. So going back to what I think Jessica was saying. That men their feelings can look different than they do with women, and particularly what depression looks like. I'm going to transition to kind of the next slide, and I'm really apologetic about having the issues with audio, because I know what that's like to be in a training or be in anything where the person who's supposed to be talking, you can't hear. It's just so distracting. So I can really understand. So about mental health challenges for dads is just as big of a problem as it is for moms. About 5 to 10%, probably closer to 10% of dads are experiencing perinatal mood and anxiety disorders. And when we think about where we're at in the field of perinatal paternal depression, we're about where we were when kind of all the sort of maternal mental health movement started. So there's a lot we don't know, but what we do know is that the rates are pretty comparable to what moms are experiencing. But when moms are depressed, dad's rates of depression go up to almost from 25 to 50%. So you almost can assume that if a mom is having depression, the father is going to have mental health challenges as well. And we see this, there's been research that's been conducted about this around the world, looking at also around gay men and gay fathers, and basically people are pretty universally at risk of depression. And I think the more risk factors you have when you think about ACEs and things like that, the more likely you are to be depressed, actually. So what does it look like when men start to struggle? What does paternal depression look like? And I think Jessica was sort of saying this. I'm not sure exactly what she meant when she was saying that men tend to act quickly. I'm not sure if that was referring to maybe suicide, but because men actually are at much higher risks of actually committing suicide than women, even though we don't tend to think about. What was that?
Or hurting themselves, trying to hurt themselves.
Exactly. Yeah. So trying to hurt themselves. So actually, men are at increased risk of that. But in terms of just paternal depression, we think about extreme irritability, being socially isolated or withdrawn. There's often an increase in alcohol or substance abuse, and it can be also an increase in things that distract you from your family. So all those good things we were talking about that dads can provide in sort of the beginning of our workshop today, that these mental health challenges take dads away from actually providing that type of care and that type of
engagement with their kids and their partners. So yeah, so it's pretty grim when we think about what untreated paternal depression can look like. There tends to be, so all those good things again we're talking about, like, don't tend to happen, like less reading, less games, less kind of rough and tumble play, less sort of oxytocin rich interactions. But there's also more child abuse and maltreatment. There's higher risks of intimate partner violence. That's something that we don't often think about when we think about DV and things like that. We think about men as just being angry, but I think when we get to understand how behavior comes out of feelings, behavior comes out of kind of mental health challenges, we can start better addressing some of these issues that really plague families. Kids who have dads that are depressed are much more likely to have mental health challenges. In the same way that kids of moms who are depressed are likely to have mental health challenges, that's the same with kids. So they're higher risks of ADHD, depression, anxiety, kind of behavioral problems, stuff like that. So I really wanted to make sure we have time today to think all together. And I know we went through the research quickly, but Richard, do you want to take this, or do you want me to sort of jump into this?
You can. It's your call.
All right, I can start it. I can start it, and then we'll jump into another breakout groups, and then we'll come back and hopefully have a discussion all together.
Actually, you know what? I think I'll let me get this kicked off, if you don't mind. So
sure.
So one of the things, it's great to have all of you who are hospital liaisons at the same time, because you're using more or less the same kinds of approaches. Oftentimes we have people with a wide variety of roles in either welcome baby or home visit programs, which is a strength. But we want to help you guys think specifically about the work that you're doing. We heard some very interesting stories about things. Alex, for example, has tried a whole lot of things to engage dads, and she shared those in our groups. But what we want you to do is to spend some time now taking that perspective. So you really want to get dads involved now, and there are tools that you use, and we want you to think about how they might change, or how you might change the way you use them, the way you present them, that would be more engaging, that would make it more likely that you engage dads. An example is that one of the guys we were working with recognized that there wasn't a place on any of the forms to put the dad's name, and he had a hard time remembering names. I have that same problem. But there was no place for him to write down the dad's name or his contact information so that he could get in touch with him or make sure that he was including him in all of the emails about him. So one of the things he started doing was just writing dad's name on it, but on each of the forms. So things like that, that would help you to think about how you might be assisted in engaging dads. And we're going to give you a reasonable amount of time. We've thought about 15 minutes. Let's make
10
it
minutes. Let's do
10 minutes. To really think through the stuff that you do, walk through everything, every interaction that you have, and think about, well, what would we change here? What would make it easier for me to get dads involved? And we want you to come away with some ideas about how to move forward. Like, I don't know, I was going to say tomorrow, but some of you may actually be seeing some families this afternoon. So go to your rooms.
Oh, hold on, wait. And I just want to say, our sense, if you had a mom that wasn't going to engage, I mean, you can even almost use that as a model for thinking about, well, what would you do to get the mom involved? I mean, I think you have a lot of tools, and we want to encourage you to use the tools you have, but also kind of widen the approach or the perspective about it. Okay, and so now we can go into the breakout.
Now go to your rooms.
Yeah, thank you.
We're coming into the end zone now, but I want to take a few minutes to see if anyone had an inspiration or learned something from someone in your rooms that yeah, I want to try that. If you had one of those moments, can you share it with us now? Either just unmute yourself or put it in the chat. Yeah, space for Dad's signature on the consent forms. We were very fortunate, thanks to Martha, okay, and Charlene. We were talking with First Five, Kevin and I were talking with First Five yesterday, and it had never occurred to them. They wanted to do this whole separate thing about counting Dad's involvement. So, well, why don't you just use the stuff you got? So we're excited that there's movement in the direction of engaging dads and noting how we're engaging dads. But we want to
give an update. Sorry, Richard, to cut you off, but Martha and I have.
No, you're not.
Kind of, but like, you know, in general, it's just like a good social norm to say I apologize.
Right.
But Martha and I have a call tomorrow with First Five about this. So about the changes, potential changes to the consent forms and things. But it's a very specific change. It is not as related to release of information. It's as related to consent to services. So I think that's a really important distinction here, which we'll talk about at a later point. But it's as related to consenting to the program, not as related to consenting to services, because as we all know, everyone has to consent to release information for themselves. So
Sure.
I'm hoping that we'll have a quick turnaround and a change fairly soon.
Yeah, but what's been exciting is the movement, the advocacy, the movement, the movement in a general sort of way, and their openness to participating with you in making changes that will encourage us. You know, what you measure, you get growth in the areas that you measure, right? So if we start thinking about how we'll know that dads are involved, then people will start doing it. So it's a very exciting time. Even small steps are good moments in advocacy. And I have to say once again, because I know that Alex is with us, and that we learned so much from you guys in our smaller groups. And we're very appreciative. And you can start to see how advocacy makes a difference by the ideas that you brought came through us. Well, Martha was in the groups anyway, she was taking notes, but came through the interaction and went from you all to First Five in ways that are going to change things in LA County. So it's real important that we remember this. So we have about 5 minutes, and I want to just try to wrap up with, so what are we talking about? What can we do? And I think the first and most important thing is to just begin yourself with the assumption that dads are in. Not all dads are going to be in. Not all dads are involved. Not all dads are as wonderful as the one that you imagined at the beginning of this of this workshop. But if we begin with the assumption that dads are in, and then, you know, how can we get them in? Talk to the mom. How would that work? But just start from there. The other thing, and I'm going to have to...
And start from there, and that they're in because dads want to be connected and involved with their kids. Because dads who are involved with their kids have a lifelong impact on their development. They also have a lifelong impact on the mom's development as a mother.
That's right. And Kevin and I did some research with another colleague at UCLA asking dads, and it was really clear that all of the dads that responded to this online survey, that they want to be in. The dads in the video that we saw earlier, it was natural for them to be in. So we need to shift so that the assumption, not the shift from thinking that it would be great to get dads. What's Karina saying? Sorry, this looks more important than what I'm saying. If they're at home during the visit, include them in the activities you're doing with the mom and ask for their opinions too. Exactly.
And if they're not, what we know now, because of all this time we spend on Zoom, and Karina, that's such a that you really hit it there, is that you can always phone them or Zoom them or bring them in some other way. There's all these ways now that we're getting used to engaging with people who are not physically with us, that we find that can be effective.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Good. And I always want to read this short quote from this wonderful book by a British evolutionary anthropologist, Machen, called The Life of Dad. And she just has this very simple section that said, and you'll understand that she's British from some of the language, one of the key and arguably easiest ways that health and social care practitioners can make sure fathers feel involved and encourage them to take on a role is to acknowledge them as a significant player. It's a simple and cost-neutral act to ensure they're included in all discussions regarding their baby, to inquire after their health and well-being, to listen to their queries and concerns and support them in their chosen role during pregnancy and at the birth, to empower them to embark on the process of becoming a dad. Those of us who research and campaign for fathers just need to find an effective way to get this message across. And thanks to LABBN, we have it right now. The other things that we've, yeah, Kevin, go ahead.
Well, we have a comment from Denise.
Oh,
saying,
good.
if you know he's around, say hello and ask how he's doing.
Exactly.
You know, it's in a way, we don't need to do incredible things. We need to do simple things more often. You know, and that can go a long way. We've heard stories about home visitors. All they did was start by saying, hello, Dad, how are you doing? I want you here. I want to know what's going on. And the dad is involved in all the session.
Right.
Because the dad felt like he mattered.
Or saying, is that Dad? Do I see Dad over there? Do you want to, can he come and join us? Right? Yeah. As Dad walks by in the back, right? Is that Dad over there? Mm-hmm. But there are also dads who are not involved, who are involved but not there, and you can ask the mom how they're doing. We also think we've talked about this opportunity a couple of times that Zoom gives us. Make sure that when you send emails, you send them to Dad. When you're scheduling, if you send texts, include Dad. If you're sending like psychoeducational materials out, that you send them to him too. And always ask participants what's worked for them. How have they included dads? What's the best way to get Dad included? And then the last piece is the penultimate one on the slide, which is we really want to make sure that we are understanding our own biases about dads and about the roles of dads and about the different ways that dads interact with babies as a group from the way moms do, and not to simply use mom's approaches to parenting as the baseline and assume that everything else is wrong. But as Kevin pointed out, kids benefit from having both the excitement and the calming that comes from having two parents who have different approaches to things. You can do this, and you are in the perfect position because you are seeing the families right in that transition into parenthood. And even if it's not their first child, you're seeing them in the transition to being the parent of this child that's arriving. And you have some great opportunities. HL says, sometimes we can say, and then she disappeared. Sometimes we can say, have you had enough sleep? Oh, goodness, yes. I'm working with the dad right now. who was talking about sleep training, and I said to him, well, it's working. Your child has trained you to know that you're going to be up for 2 hours every night. So yeah, it's exhausting. You guys know this, how you see these families all the time. What an incredible moment in a family's life you get to be involved in. And you are in the position to make a huge difference about dad's comfort level, about mom's feeling that that dads should be expected to participate and that it's okay. You can normalize that for them, as Martha says. And you know, you're going to get the slides from Martha. You have our emails. Email us if something wonderful happens, let us know. If something weird happens that you don't get, send us an email and we'll say, oh, that was weird, and wonder with you. We love to hear from you, and we are very, very grateful for your participation today.